immigrated to San Francisco
That's correct.
and they built a life there. Can you explain to us what was their story?
I'd love to. That's a great story. My mom was born and raised in Egypt, Cairo, Egypt, and Gamal Abdel Nasser was the prime minister at the time, or president. I'm not sure what his designation was. And prior to him, there was a guy named King Farouk, and he loved the Jews. He had no problem with them. But Nasser came in, and he was he was not a friend of the Jews, and he wanted to destroy Israel. And so they came out with a thing in the mid-'60s, and she was exiled out of her country, denationalized or denaturalized, however you say it, right? She goes, I remember being at the port, and they took my jewelry off my hands, and you're not allowed to have anything. And they had businesses and homes, gone, out. You either left or you're going to jail. Simple. And then she went to France, and from France she came to America, San Francisco. She came here around 1965. My father was born in Rangoon, Burma, in 1938. In 1941, the Japanese was bombing Burma. They escaped Burma, and they went to India, Calcutta, India. Stayed there for 15 or so years, and then they made it by boat over here to San Francisco. My dad came here 1958 and joined the military and served during the Vietnam War in Germany.
And they met here.
They met at a synagogue in the Richmond district, yes. My mom was, I think, 19 at the time. My dad was maybe 25 or 26.
And they built a life there in San Francisco.
They built a life. And, I remember being on food stamps, and, they didn't give people a lot of stuff. But, you need a little food, they'll give you this or that. We had nothing, literally nothing. So my dad put his nickels together along with his brother. They started buying little pieces of property here and there.
Is it possible to do that now, you think, for immigrants like that to come to San Francisco and build their life?
If you come in with a suitcase full of money, maybe. But if you come in like they did, I don't see it being possible. Because the money that they paid for property is exponentially much more expensive now compared to what it was back then. If you compare what the average income was to what the property was. Nowadays, they bought a property, I remember it was a 2-unit property for about $130,000 in the early 80s. Well, that property now is probably worth $2 million. How are you going to come in and buy a $2 million property if you don't have at least $300,000-400,000 to put down and an income to back it up to pay for that mortgage? It's impossible.
And now you grew up in this city, right? Can you
Born and
tell
raised.
us? Yeah. What is it like for average people that don't know San Francisco? You've been in the city, you were in part of the fire department and paramedics.
Yes.
And you saw changes in San Francisco.
Yes.
Can you tell us what you saw?
I saw the increase of the homelessness for sure. Working on an ambulance, you see that. And you start seeing more programs for the homeless. And when you start to realize that it's actually a business, that people are profiting off of the homelessness, you realize that there's something awry here. Over time, you see more traffic, you see more regulations, much harder. Like, I wasn't able to buy myself a property in San Francisco. Couldn't afford it. On a good wage. I was making a good wage as a civil servant, but I couldn't afford it. So I went to the East Bay to buy property. The increase in homelessness is stark, and that was probably the most visible change. If you want to talk about what you can actually see in front of you, in my neighborhood, the Richmond district, there's tents. I might have sent you guys pictures too. There's literally tents in the center divide where people are sleeping. That, and of course, the crime. The crime is outrageous. I've seen people in Walgreens. Those videos that people say, oh, that's not real. It's true. You go into a Walgreens now in San Francisco, they have these plastic walls up, these doors, where you can't even get a roll of toilet paper because people are stealing them.
What was it like for you to deal with the homeless? What was for paramedics and firefighters? How did they deal with it?
When you first start this career, you get on board and you're like, hey, I want to, I'm here to save lives. I'm here to put out fires. I'm here to, change lives. And then there is a point where you go, I'm here to deal with homeless people and take them to the hospital with guys that, like I told you before, said, you'll take me to the hospital, you'll feed me, you'll do this. So it becomes social. a social issue. And because of protocols and policies, you can't just tell them, hey, get out of here. There's nothing wrong with you, because they'll turn around and sue you. We're in a very litigious society, right?
So they'll turn around and sue. You went there to help them.
Sure. Well, if you say, hey, you don't need any help, get out of here, you're not allowed to do that. You have to offer everybody a ride to the hospital, no matter what. So if a guy comes to me and says, I got a broken toenail, I want to go to the hospital, you have to take him to the hospital. So now you're taking this guy to the hospital with a broken toenail, and somebody is having a heart attack down the street. Now you got to wait for the ambulance that's farther away. So yeah, it's a problem.
Are you concerned with stock market volatility?
Already echoing his former controversial statement that for Americans who feel that they've been wronged and betrayed by a corrupt system, he is their retribution. Watch.
In 2016, I declared, I am your voice. Today I add, I am your warrior. I am your justice. And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. I am your retribution.
The timing of all this came amid a wave of attention on Trump's campaign, contrasted notably with those of his rivals for 2024. One day before all of this, the RNC held its Republican national debate. Fox maintained exclusive rights over the video and only allowed other networks to run a maximum of 3 minutes. It was very limited in terms of how it could spread. The debate also suggested public interest was falling, though. It had an estimated 12.8 million viewers, which was about half of the audience as last time, when Republicans debated in August of 2015. Now, very likely part of the falling interest was, well, because Trump, the leading candidate, was not there. Trump declared he should have incumbency and doesn't feel a need to debate the others. He refused to sign the RNC pledge to support whoever the party chooses as its nominee. And Trump instead opted to hold his own discussion. Trump did an interview with former Fox News host Tucker Carlson on X. And as of this afternoon, the tweet of that video had about 255 million views. Now, during that interview, Trump explained his views on the indictments, and in particular, Trump described his understanding of why these indictments are ironically helping him at the polls. The reason, according to Trump, is that Americans are smarter than they look, and they're seeing through it all.
It's been amazing. My poll numbers are the highest I've ever had. But because people understand it.
Well, can I just ask you, that gets back to my original question. So if the protest didn't work, you got elected anyway. Yeah. Impeachment didn't work twice, obviously. Indictment is not working. Your poll numbers go up. When they raided Mar-a-Lago in August of last year, your numbers went up. They can indict you 20 times, and you're not gonna lose the Republican primary because of that.
Well, so, it makes it look even more ridiculous. I mean, the 4 indictments, and maybe there'll be more. I don't know. These people are crazy.
But they're counterproductive. So if you chart it out, it's an escalation, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So what's next after, trying to put you in prison for the rest of your life? That's not working. So, don't they have to kill you now?
I think the people of our country don't get enough credit for how smart they are. And I'm not sure I would have said this 10 years ago, but they get it,
Trump goes on to explain the many glaring holes and the many charges against him. He suggests that each of the charges is not only legally unsound, but also hypocritical. He notes that the classified document scandal is just one example, that many of his opponents on the Democrat side have done exactly what they're accusing him of doing, only they actually did it. But he explains a bit more deeply what's happening in America. Trump explains why, despite the legal troubles he's facing, he actually feels hope for the nation. Watch.
I have never seen spirit like there is right now. Even coming down here, just the people on the road that are just absolutely going crazy. And the reason is, I think they like me, and I know they love my policies. I hope they like me too. A lot of people say they don't like me, but they like my policies. I think they like me. But I have never seen spirit like it is right now. And the reason is because crooked Joe Biden is so bad. He's the worst president in the history of our country.
Now, as the interview goes on, Trump goes deeper into this. He seems very much aware of the attacks against him. Trump believes these attacks are going to continue, and he believes as well that if another Republican candidate does win, they're going to face the exact same attacks that he's facing. Now, for Trump, this is just the new form of the Democrat election campaign, the weaponization of the justice system to bring down their opponents. But he also explains further why, despite all this, he seems actually relatively unfazed. He explains why he can endure it.
How do you do that? How do you get indicted, every week and stay cheerful?
I think it's a lot easier because I'm so high in the polls, because it means the people get it. The people see it's a fraud. The people see it.
Now, election season is just still kicking off. This is technically just the beginning. Now, so far, it looks like none of these attacks on Trump are actually harming him. Instead, it actually looks like they're helping him in the polls by a good margin, and they've notably led the Republican establishment to mostly rally behind Trump. The question Tucker raised was that, given so much has been done against Trump already, it's hard to imagine what options the Democrats would even have on the table. Controversy doesn't seem to impact Trump at the polls. Legal attacks, the pressure, they don't seem to faze him. It's all having the opposite of effect of what logic would normally suggest. And next up is going to be the trials. And even alongside that, innocence or guilt is going to be weighed separately. The courts are going to decide Trump's case, but public opinion is going to decide the future. Now, in other news, political symbols have huge impacts on social movements. We're going to discuss the impact of the Trump mugshot on the national debate. More after the break.
Taking place here is a travesty of justice. We did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. And everybody knows it. I've never had such support. And that goes with the other ones, too. What they're doing is election interference. They're trying to interfere with an election. There's never been anything like it in our country before.
Now, this marks the fourth time that Trump has been indicted, just in time for the 2024 elections. Yet, unlike in previous charges, this time Trump, through the whole process of being booked, authorities released his mugshot soon after, and that mugshot has now become a political symbol. Now, Trump made a surprise return to X, formerly known as Twitter, and in his first post since January of 2021, Donald Trump released his own mugshot. It had the date of his arrest and stated, "Election interference, never surrender." And also posted was a link to DonaldJTrump.com, where Trump posted a personal note, and he states this: "Today at the notoriously violent jail in Fulton County, Georgia, I was arrested despite having committed no crime." He adds that the American people know what's going on. He alleges that the charges against him are a travesty of justice and election interference. And he states the left wants to intimidate you out of voting for a political progressives in the U.S. Congress. Hey, Trevor Loudon, thanks for being on Crossroads.
Hey, good to be here, Josh. Always good to be here.
Yeah, so Trevor, you know, Trump's mugshot is now public. He looks very angry, and I was interested to see how people were spreading it immediately. People seem to believe this reflects something they're feeling as well. And my first thought was, you know, this is very much like in the Soviet Union. You have the Kilroy was here meme. It's like the new Che Guevara T-shirt, only it's the opposite. Instead, it's like the comeback of the conservatives. I'm curious,
Look,
what are your thoughts on this?
Look, I wish I was a screen printer, because I'll be turning out thousands and thousands of T-shirts with that on there right now. And I'm sure people are doing that. That's an iconic photograph. That is somebody who's been aggrieved, who's very determined, and is going to push back and make you pay. And I think that is the mood of the American people right now. We saw that in the song, you know, "Try That in a Small Town." We saw that with Anthony Oliver's, you know, famous, rich man north of Richmond. And this is a perfect photo. Why they put that out as the mugshot, I have no idea. Whoever did that was either a fool or a secret Trump supporter. That's what I would say.
I'm actually wondering that as well. I feel like they pushed it one step too far, but you know, Trevor, you and I, of course, we research a lot on former communist regimes and current communist regimes and current communist movements and former ones as well. It's understood the impact of an idea, the impact of a cultural image. The left is very good at this. You know, again, the way they transformed Che Guevara from being like a murderous psychopath, which is what he was, into an image of like youthful rebellion is a perfect example of it.
Yep.
And you know, in Russia again, the Kilroy was here meme. It was just some random graffiti that took on symbolic meaning because because the Soviet regime hated it so much, basically. You know, for the people, it took on symbolic meaning. In China, there's the Winnie the Pooh representing Xi Jinping. How do these symbols come to represent, I guess, what the public is feeling? And what does it mean when that happens? Because I feel like I'm watching this happen in America now with this image.
Well, look, it's the zeitgeist, you know, it's the time, it's the spirit of the time, and some people can tap into that. It's a sort of, you know, Jung used to talk about the collective unconscious. It's these ideas people are feeling these powerful ideas, but they can't articulate it. And somebody comes along and articulates it, and it's a symbol, it's a song, it's a poem. You know, Common Sense by Thomas Paine, the famous pamphlet that helped spark the American Revolution. Something comes along at just the right time, you know, and we've seen this with songs. We saw this with symbols in towards the fall of the Soviet Union. We see these symbols, you know, in China with the people with the paper, the white sheets of paper, you know, all this kind of thing. Look, some people have criticised Ron DeSantis for going after culture. Well, if you get, you know, there's always legitimate criticisms of anybody, but not placing culture as important. Culture is a huge part of the battle. Well, you know, the Epoch Times shows that you devote a lot of time to culture. It's not all politics, but it's culture, it's religion, it's psychology, it's everything, because culture is what binds us together. And if you want to make a movement for freedom, you've got to have the symbols that will represent that people can gather around and unite with. You know, so I'm going to be seeing this photograph everywhere between now and the election. It's going to be everywhere. And it's going to be as big as Che Guevara, but for a right cause, for a change. So, yeah, I'm very grateful to whoever took that photo and whoever chose it, publicised it, whether that was intention or not. I think they've done the president a great favour and captured the mood of the American people.
In other news, Trump is facing 4 indictments with over 700 years of possible prison time and potentially even the death sentence. But look, how solid are any of these charges? Well, we have the Trump lawyer here to discuss with us after the break.
Of the Philippines.
One cross after another says, we don't know who the hell this guy is, only God knows. That's a goddamn travesty. But with modern forensic techniques, we can identify who these people are. But nobody's doing a goddamn thing about this.
There were 16,000 Japanese troops here, 12,000 Marines, infantry Marines, defending on a battle to the death.
The Japanese military virtually destroyed the city of Manila.
We were so much frightened.
30,000 civilians killed against 60,000 Japanese, almost a 2-to-1 ratio.
Everywhere you looked, there was utter desolation. Are we ever going to find the truth?
Digital ID, and once cash is eliminated, and the very same people pushing for the digital ID are the people pushing for the abolishing of cash. Once you have that system in place, they make life essentially impossible for anyone who doesn't want to participate in it. That's the real threat, right? Because a lot of people, if they understood the big picture, they would be inclined to resist. But when they realize they won't be able to interact with society, having a job would be impossible. Going to the grocery store would be impossible if you refuse to participate in the system. That's what is so incredibly dangerous. And so I agree with the other panelists. This needs to be resisted in every possible way. And one very good avenue to do that is at the state level. I, of course, live in Florida. Our governor, our legislature are already working on legislation to ban central bank digital currencies. I've spoken with legislators across the country who are working on similar efforts. Actually, right early on during the COVID pandemic, our government here in Florida banned vaccine passports. And that's the kind of action we need. Most states in America are actually controlled by ostensible Republicans. And Republicans, if you read their party platform, claim to oppose all of these sorts of intrusive, privacy-shredding, freedom-shredding policy agendas. So what needs to happen then here is for these Republican politicians, who of course are supposed to be loyal to the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of their state, and also their party platform, all they need to do is fulfill what they have already pledged to do, and this agenda is stopped in its tracks.
If the WEF was a nation, and they were infiltrating our governments the way the WEF is proudly doing, we would see it as an act of war.
Yeah, no, I agree. Technology, it's kind of a double-edged sword. So technology can be used to advance an authoritarian surveillance state, but there's also technological tools, whether it's money, in the form of Bitcoin, a free market currency, or communications tool like Signal, or a privacy tool like Tor. I still have several reasons to believe that just as these enormously powerful institutions are creating censorship tools, firewalls, there's also the opposite side of things, and that's the reason that I'm optimistic about the future still is that while this totalitarian hellscape is very much possible, it's also possible that the tools will be developed to fight against these feudalist madmen that are trying to enslave us in perpetuity. So we'll see how it goes, but I remain optimistic about the future because of the technological innovation that can keep us, our conversations private, secure, and our freedom intact.
Well, that's great to hear that hopeful tone. All right, Jordan, James, Alex, thank you so much. It's been a great discussion. We really appreciated having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.